Welcome back to another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast brought to you by FanDuel. Happy Wednesday, everybody. And that means today we are continuing to break down the Notre Dame USC matchup that is happening this Saturday night, Battle for the Jeweled Shillelagh. Saturday night inside of Notre Dame Stadium, 7:30 p.m. kickoff. This is going to be a fun one today, Brian. You got a new background.
Man.
We're talking keys to
Yep.
victory today,
Well,
man.
got a new background at somebody else's house. Big shout out to DMND13, he's one of the OGs on the site. We're kind of at the halfway point between our trip out east to go attend the funeral for my wife's stepdad, and they offered to let just kind of have their little home studio. So I got this little background, and I feel like I'm getting my school picture taken, right? Like I'm ready to go, man. So yeah, I'm ready to talk about this game, and it's a big one for Notre Dame in a lot of different ways, Trev. A lot of different ways. Today we're going to talk about matchups. We're going to talk about keys to victory, doing our new format. Continuing our new format, so that way tomorrow we can spend a lot of time previewing a lot of these other big games that are going on tomorrow after our prediction show. But look, this is going to be a test for Notre Dame. Notre Dame's the better team. They're the team that should win, but at the same time, this is going to be a battle. It's going to be a win you're going to have to earn. And I'm looking forward to breaking it down and talking more about it.
It's definitely going to be a fun one to dive into. And I'm a pretty impatient person, so I'm ready to dive into it head first, man. I'm ready to dive into it. We're talking matchups that matter. Go ahead.
You're usually pretty patient, Trev, but this week with USC, I mean, it's like it's fourth quarter of the NC State game, and Trev's texting me like, "Okay, let's start talking about USC game. Let's get ready for this." So
Dude,
he's ready to go. He's ready to go.
I'm amped. I woke up at 5 a.m. this morning just because I couldn't go back to sleep. It was the second day in a row. I need this game to happen, and I need it to happen now. Which brings us to talking about the matchups that matter. And we're breaking this down to offensive and defensively. And look, we talked yesterday about how much this game means. And we talked about what's at stake for Notre Dame. We talked about USC as a whole. Today, we're talking about the individual matchups that are going to dictate whether Notre Dame is going to walk off the field with a dub or if they're going to walk off the field and have a lot to think about in the bye week. And where we're going to start, Brian, because this is a talented team on both sides of the ball. But we're starting with Notre Dame slot receivers versus Kamari Ramsey, safety. And this is something that we actually talked about before the show. When you go and you look at USC on film, what they do a lot of, Brian, is they will rotate Kamari Ramsey down when teams go in 11 personnel, something that Notre Dame does quite a bit. This is going to be a matchup that Notre Dame has to win on offense.
It's a very interesting decision by Coach Lynn, who, as you know, Trev, I think very high level. I think Danton Lynn's done a very nice job there. This is not a great defense, but it's a solid defense. It's a defense that can give you problems. And this is 2 years removed from that defense being an absolute sieve. Just an absolutely awful defense. And they play with a lot more toughness. They fly around more. There's a lot more discipline than there was last year. But one of the interesting things is that I don't think they have like a real true nickel. And so what they've chosen to do is they bring Kamari Ramsey down, who I think is one of the better safeties on the schedule for Notre Dame this year. And the pickup of Bishop Fitzpatrick has allowed them to, or Fitzgerald, it's Fitzgerald, right? Bishop Fitzgerald. Bishop Fitzgerald has allowed them to have some flexibility with Kamari, because if he doesn't come over, you don't have the depth at safety to really bring him down that way. And he ends up playing a lot in the slot. Now, this presents some positives for Notre Dame and also some dangers for Notre Dame. And I'll start the concerns first. Is this matchup for Will Paulding is Notre Dame's going to try to run their mid zone, their outside zone. They're going to try to, run their screen game. And that Will Paulding, if Jaden Greathouse doesn't play, it's Will Paulding against Kamari Ramsey on the perimeter of the run game. I don't love that matchup for Notre Dame. So the slots are going to have to be there. If Jaden Greathouse is there, I feel a little bit better about his ability to block Kamari Ramsey. But Will Paulding, who's a strong kid, he's just smaller, is going to have his hands full in that regard. And so that's part of the matchup there. But the other part of it is the one that I think is in Notre Dame's favor, which is especially if Jaden Greathouse plays, especially if he plays, and they're smart enough to play him more, is the pass game matchup is one that I like. Kamari Ramsey's a really good alley safety. He's a really good zone safety. He's a really good force against the run. He's not a great cover guy, Trev, and I think that's a matchup where I think Notre Dame can kind of take advantage of some things and find some success, is if they can find ways to get Kamari Ramsey to have to chase the receivers, whether it's slot fades, whether it's out cuts, whether it's screen game, whether it's crossers. I think that they're going to have to find some ways to get open against him. But I'll be honest, like Will Pauling has not been a great route runner so far for Notre Dame. He's had some good moments, but he's kind of thrived. A lot of his numbers are him just being wide open. He's going to have to win off the line more in this game, and it gives him an opportunity to kind of show, hey, I am that dude that's produced those numbers. He can't help it that teams blow coverages when he's running routes. That's not like a negative on Will Pauling. It's just the reality of the situation where he hasn't had to win a lot off the line. He did one last week where he just smoked the nickel for a 42-yard gain. So that was like, okay, there we go. So it's not a criticism of Will Pauling. It's more just like we just haven't seen him have to do it a whole lot. And he's going to have to do it more. I just don't see Kamari Ramsey blowing coverages. He's a veteran. He's been around a while. And he came with D'Anton Lynn from UCLA. So he's been in the system now 3 years. He just doesn't make a lot of mistakes. And I think that's why they put him down in the nickel in this particular matchup. So, or in this season. So it's going to present some unique opportunities. And if Notre Dame's going to have success, they're going to have to handle that matchup.
I like that you referenced it in both phases as well, not just in the pass game, because Kamari Ramsey is one of the most sure tacklers on that defense. Yesterday, I talked about how the back end of this USC defense gives up a lot of big plays. Tackling has been an issue. Kamari Ramsey is not one of those players. He's played in 5 games this season, hasn't missed a single tackle. And a lot of the work that he does is out in space. He's a veteran guy, a lot of experience. It's definitely a matchup that Notre Dame's going to have to win in the run game and take advantage of in the pass game, because you go and you look at his numbers on PFF. He's been targeted 17 times, allowed 12 receptions. Most of the receiving yards he's given up as well came after the catch. He has only given up 1 touchdown on the season, but it's because when you look at the personnel groupings that have gone up against Kamari Ramsey, some of those teams don't have a Jaden Greathouse or a Will Pauling at their disposal. Definitely one to keep an eye out on. The second matchup, Brian, we're sticking with the receiving core here, and we talk about it every single week. And sometimes you just need your dudes to be dudes, and Malachi Fields so far this season has shown that he is that dude in the boundary this year for Notre Dame. His matchup this weekend with DeCarlos Nicholson is going to be one that Notre Dame will have to take advantage of. Malachi Fields was targeted a little bit last week, but we didn't get to see the Malachi Fields that we're used to seeing. It was, his first game under 40 yards in like 11 games. He had 1 catch for 20 yards, not for a lack of targets, but in a game with this much magnitude, in a game that's this big, you're going to need Malachi Fields to win this matchup with Nicholson.
I think this is a good-on-good matchup, Trev. I do. I think DeCarlos Nicholson's a good football player. I don't think he's an elite player, but I think he's a good football player. And when I look at this particular matchup, for example, I think this is a game, where you look at DeCarlos Nicholson. He's got size that a lot of guys don't have against Malachi Fields. He's 6'3". He's 1.5 inches at least taller than Will Lee, who Notre Dame went up against in week 2. He's smooth. He's not like a burner, but he's smooth. He's fluid. He does some good things. He's been good most of the year. He is coming off of a game against USC where I don't think he necessarily played that great. And he got beat a few times in that game. And Michigan had some success throwing into the boundary against him in this game. And with all due respect to Michigan's receivers, they're not as good as Malachi Fields. And so, I want to go at him because this is his first real test of a team that's got like a really good, big, talented boundary receiver. And I want to see Notre Dame to go against it because Malachi, look, last week, Malachi was, I think, targeted 7 times, 1 completion because NC State was geared towards not letting Malachi Fields go off. USC could do that. I don't know that they will do that. And either way, this is a game where Malachi is going to have to win this matchup, run game wise, blocking wise, but then also in the pass game, because I think you're going to really need Malachi Fields in this game to give you something. Like the matchup on the other side with Marcellus Williams and Jordan Faison, that's one that Jordan Faison and hopefully we get to see some of KK Smith. They did something interesting last week that if Jaden Greathouse can't go, I want to see more of. And that was in the second half. They were putting KK at Z and Faison in the slot. And that's a very interesting one. And then maybe now we're talking about Jordan Faison against Kamari Ramsey in that first one at times if Greathouse can't go. But we did see those snaps where you saw KK Smith outside. So whether it's KK or Jordan Faison, and they present two very different skill sets. And I hope, Trev, that we see more of KK playing for reasons I've mentioned. I want to give Jordan Faison a breather. He's playing way too many reps. I'm worried about him wearing down. Number two, him and KK bring different skill sets. And I also want to see at times where you have both of them on the field together with KK at Z and Jordan in the slot. But Jordan's the shifty, the outs, the slants, the comebacks, the stops, the after the catch. It's not really like a big vertical threat, but KK is the exact opposite. KK is a vertical threat. So you present two different matchups over there. So I like that matchup for Notre Dame. But if DeCarlos Nicholson is able to play Malachi Fields one-on-one, that allows USC to kind of roll their coverage a bit more and help out to the field where maybe they don't have the same sort of advantageous matchups that they have. Notre Dame doesn't have the same advantageous matchups if they're rolling coverage as they will if USC is really focused on trying to stop Malachi Fields. So if I'm D'Anton Lynn, I'm going to try and see if DeCarlos can handle this matchup. And then I'm going to try to help out to the field. But if he can, now they can help out. If he can't, then you're in a situation where now USC can play your other stuff more. They can focus more attention on Eli Raritan. They can focus more attention on, if you're giving them problems in the slot. Let's say that Greathouse or Pauling or Faison comes out early and beats beats Kamari Ramsey in a couple plays. And you look into the boundary and DeCarlos is just locking up Malachi Fields. And you can say, hey, let's adjust our coverage to make sure we're helping out against the tight end and the slots. And so I think it's imperative that you win this matchup because what makes this team so difficult to defend is it's hard to guard everybody. And if Malachi gets going, I think that's the true key to this pass game going off because now you have to kind of help him out and now play everybody else straight up. And that's hard to do with all the weapons that Notre Dame has.
No, I agree with you completely. So does FanDuel. I mean, they have Malachi Fields over under set right now at 51.5 after coming off of his lowest output in almost a season and a half. So you go and you look at this matchup in the boundary. We're talking about a cornerback that has given up 4 touchdowns this season. Half of those came last game against a receiving core, like you said, with all due respect to the Michigan Wolverines. I don't really think they hold a candle all that much to Notre Dame's receiving core that features Fields and Faison and potentially Greathouse or Pauling. One aspect of this matchup that I think will be interesting is if Denbrock is going to try to stretch the field at all this week in the boundary, now that you have Cam Williams as the second string with Micah Gilbert out with a hurt hand. I do think that's going to be interesting to see if he's going to utilize that in any sort of way to maybe not necessarily get a target, but you're talking about Fields and Williams have two very different skill sets. It's not that Fields is a stiff in the boundary, but I will be very interested to see if they utilize Cam Williams at all. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in the keys to victory part, about keeping up the pace and pushing the pace and tempo. You get two guys on the field like KK Smith and Cam Williams. That might be interesting to see what they do to USC's corners.
I want to say something else about this too, Trev, because part of the reason that we talk about DeCarlos Nicholson in this matchup is because they play field boundary like Notre Dame. So they have Marcellus Williams to the field. They have DeCarlos Nicholson to the boundary. Another potential wrinkle that I'd love to see is some stuff, and we saw it a little bit last week where they were putting Jordan Faison into the boundary, and you put Malachi Fields to the field, and now let him get some matchups against Marcellus Williams or some matchups against Kamari Ramsey. And so that's something you can do too, is if you're getting whooped by Kamari Ramsey in the run game, that's an easy adjustment to make. And now they've got some tough decisions to make. Like, I would like to see DeCarlos Ramsey trying to chase Jordan Faison all over the field. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then have them try to handle Malachi Fields. So I would do some of that stuff in this game. Really especially if you can get your run game going early and force them to get that boundary safety down into the box, and then open up some one-on-ones to the field. Then getting Malachi matched up in some of those situations would be good. But at the end of the day, the matchup that's primary is going to be that one in the boundary. And I would love to see them play Cam Williams and say, look, man, we need you to do 4 things. We need you to run a hitch route. We need you to run a stop route. We need you to run a go route. We need you to block. That's it. That's it.
Plain and simple. And I like it, and keep it simple for him because athletically he's a freak that I think he could start to see some time this week, especially given the limited depth at receiver.
And I was talking to a buddy of mine recently who knows some NFL scouts, and he was telling me that NFL scouts come away from Notre Dame practice like, dude, I don't know who this number 5 is if they're not playing, but this guy's a freaky athlete. He's an SEC athlete. So, I mean, people see it that don't, but just for whatever reason, the Notre Dame coaches don't want to put him on the field. So,
well, hopefully this is
CJ Card love it.
Yeah, that's for sure. That is absolutely for sure. And here's the hoping that we see him this week. One player that I am for sure certain that we are going to see this week in Notre Dame starting lineup is offensive lineman Joe Otting, who is stepping in for Ashton Craig, who went down with an unfortunate season-ending knee injury, hoping for a speedy recovery for Ashton Craig. But that paved the way for Joe Otting to earn his first collegiate start. I don't know if the stage gets much bigger for the redshirt sophomore than starting in South Bend under the lights against USC. But his matchup with the interior defensive line that we spoke pretty highly of yesterday when we were previewing USC, that's going to be a very interesting matchup to watch. You talked about Notre Dame needing to get the run game going to help support the passing attack. Joe Otting is going to play a big hand in that.
Yeah, and Joe was solid when he came off the bench. I mean, he was solid. He had some good moments and some moments where it's like, okay, he's going to have to move his feet a little bit better there and do a little bit better job there of finishing off this blocks. But that's kind of what you expect when a guy kind of gets thrown into the fire for the first time. But overall, Joe handled himself fine. He was fine, and he'll have to be on top of his game. It's going to have to grow up quickly. And he's a kid. Look, we loved him coming out of high school. I was very high on Joe Otting. I knew he'd need time to fill out and grow and those type of things. And this is his chance to kind of go show that, hey, I can play football here. Because if he struggles, then Notre Dame's going to have to spend the bye week trying to figure out, okay, do we just keep trotting him out there, or do we consider moving some people around, whether that's just moving Sullivan Absher into center or move Anthony Knapp into center and kick Kirby Lambert out to left tackle and then let Sullivan Absher play right guard. And so, I mean, you're going to have to figure some things out there, but hopefully Joe Otting comes out and plays really good football. And he's like, hey, coach, I got this. Like, we're good. I got this. Cause if he can handle USC, then he's going to be fine the rest of the way. I mean, this is probably the best D tackle group that he's going to face from a length, athleticism, talent standpoint. It's not an elite D tackle group, but it's the best I think he's going to face the rest of the way. And like you mentioned yesterday, Trev, this isn't a big group. Keyshawn Silver's big, but the rest of them are like 6'5", 290, 295, athletic, muscular kids. And Joe's going to have his hands full. And the reality is, Trev, you're going to struggle to run the football if your center's getting dominated. We saw that a little bit against NC State. Ashton did not play a bad game. There's about 4 or 5 snaps where he got beat. And on those snaps, it just blew up the play. And so he's going to have to just hold his own. And they're going to have to be smart about how they design the game plan, around him. I think this be a game where maybe some pin and pulls would be advantageous, some gap stuff. On top, mix it up. Don't let just USC think we can defend mid zone and outside zone and duo all day. Be a little bit more creative with that run game. But Joe's going to have to hold his own, pass pro and run blocking, because that's how you can blow everything up, is just get dominated right up the middle. We say it all the time, Trev. Easiest way to shut down an offense is dominate it right up the middle. And they're going to go after him. They're going to run stunts at him. They're going to slant across his face, bring linebackers around, make him have to see twists and stunts, make him have to handle it. They're going to bring their D tackle, slam him right to his face and try to get him out of his game. They're going to go at him early. Why? Because Dan Tomlin's a good football coach. And anytime you've got a guy at a position like center that's brand new, you go at him. Hey, let's see what you got, kid. And so Joe's going to get tested early, and if he's ready for the challenge, then the offensive line should be able to do what they need to do.
Thankfully, he spent the entire spring repping with the first team and took a lot of reps alongside Billy Schrouth. And I'm hoping that is something that's going to benefit him after, basically spending an entire first part of an offseason alongside an offensive captain. So here's hoping. Definitely more than capable. Luckily, you're not giving up a whole lot of size either. Ashton Craig is 6'5", 310. Joe Otting is 6'4", 308. So it's not like build-wise you're trotting anybody out there that's significantly different. Just the experience is going to be interesting to see how he handles that. That's for sure. Brian, let's talk a little defense. And this is the side of the ball that will be very interesting to watch on Saturday because they are facing a very explosive and efficient offense when USC comes to town. And we talked about it yesterday, third in the country in points per game, second in the country in total yards a game, and first in the country in yards per play. And this is going to be one that, the defensive turnaround, the culmination of that has been leading up to this. And if they're going to have success in this matchup, they're going to need some of their guys to step up and be guys. But before we start talking about player matchups, Brian, big picture, we're talking Chris Ash versus Lincoln Riley. That's the biggest matchup in this one.
It is. And at the end of the day, as we saw against Miami, as we saw against Texas A&M, as we saw against Purdue, if the D coordinator doesn't put the talent in the position to be successful, it won't be successful. And, we're talking about a team. I mean, Colin Klein ripped Chris Ash to shreds. Shannon Dawson coached circles around Chris Ash. I would argue the guy at Penn State outcoached Chris Ash in the first half. Eventually, just you're behind so much. But we've seen him improve the last 3 games. Now, I don't care what he said in the press conference last night. They're not doing the same stuff, just doing it better. There are things they're doing better. We showed that in the Upon Further Review breakdown, but they are doing things very differently. And that's going to have to continue in this game. He's not going to be able to just continue to just go out there and, let's line up and play 4-2-5, cover 2, cover 4, cover 3, and not, be aggressive. He's going to have a plan early to attack USC. He's going to have to, and we'll dive more into this in the keys to victory. He's going to have a plan to get them out of rhythm. And then he's going to have to adjust because, look, you may have Lincoln Riley down in the first half. You may be all up in Lincoln Riley's in the first half. But that dude's going to go in at halftime and say, okay, yeah, they got us in the first half, but guess what? This, and this is there. Let's adjust. Let's get the players going and then come out in the second half and then just boom, 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 right down the field. Next thing you know, 5 minutes have gone by. You punted once and they've scored twice, and now all of a sudden it's a 24-21 ball game. So you're going to have to be on top of your game. Game plan's got to be strong. Play calling's got to be strong. Adjustments have to be strong. And you've got to have some stoppers in your back pocket, meaning there's got to be some things you think you can go to in key moments to say, this is how we can get a stop. This is how we can, get to them, and be prepared to use those when the time is right. That's part of the great thing about being part of the thing about being a great play caller is you may have something that, dude, I have a strong feeling that we can get to the quarterback on this play. Do I want to use that on 2nd and 5 of the first drive? Or do I want to wait till they're going down to try to tie the ball game up and pull it out here? It's kind of like Mike Denbrock in that screen that he used against Louisville last year. I know for a fact he had that, and he knew he could go to that whenever he wanted. They knew they had that. But, you wait for the right time. And he waited to the right time, and boom, you call it, and 31-17. Ball game's basically over. So it's going to have to be a big one for Chris Ash. He's going to have to be on top of his keys. And part of that means trust your coaches. But you also have to do something that Al Golden struggled to do, which is stop Lincoln Riley, because as you mentioned yesterday, Al Golden got out-coached by Lincoln Riley twice. And we'll talk about what happened that one time in the part 1 of the keys to victory on defense. But, I think this is the kind of game that can really win over the Notre Dame fan base for Chris Ash. If he can go out there and do what and let these guys do what they're capable of.
I transcribed his interview yesterday, and one of the things that he touched on that I did actually really like was he said that he has a better understanding of his players. And if that is true, then you know that your personnel is an aggressive defense. You know that you can play press man and be aggressive in that with Leonard Moore and with Christian Gray, and even with guys like Dallas Golden, players that we'll talk about here in a little bit. But if you truly know your players, then don't make the mistake of what Al Golden made last year in Los Angeles. Plain and simple. You had a certain game plan in 2023, and then you kind of threw it out the window in 2024, and USC and Lincoln Riley were able to take advantage. This is going to be an absolutely huge, huge matchup for Chris Ash. And to your point, he has the opportunity to kind of say, okay, the first 2.5 games were the outlier. You mentioned that yesterday. Because now what is this became? It's a pattern. It is now a trend that this defense has been ascending ever since really the second half against Purdue. When you brought up in one of the upon further reviews, like, hey, we saw some more aggressive things in the second half against Purdue. Lo and behold, they allowed one touchdown and it was on the last play of the game against Purdue. And so there are some things that this defense is going to have to continue to implement. Chris Ash is going to be huge in that. But again, it comes down to trusting and knowing your players. And some of the players that you're going to have to trust are your edge rushers opposite of Boubacar Traore to win their matchup against Tobias Raymond. That is something that is going to be imperative in this matchup, Brian. That's the second matchup that we're talking about here.
It's a big one, Trev. And look, Tobias, it could be Elijah Page. He's been out since, I think the last game he played in, I believe, was the Purdue game. Maybe the Michigan State game. I forget which game. He got hurt in one of those two games. Either it was Purdue or Michigan State. I know he didn't play against Illinois, and I don't believe he played last week against USC. Tobias Raymond's been their left tackle. And
Michigan State was the last game.
Michigan State was his last game. And so, like, he was very good against Michigan. I mean, really shut them down. I like the matchup on the other side with Boubacar. Obviously going against, their big old right tackle, Justin Tuanu. It's my best shot at it, 6'6", 315. I like that matchup for Notre Dame. But this is a matchup that USC could take advantage of if Notre Dame's not able to play well on the side. We've seen Jordan Patojo last week. We saw a lot of Jordan Patojo and a lot of Josh Burnham at that spot. We'll potentially see a little bit of Bryce Young. But I think you've got to get to you've got to win on the edge. And this isn't just about the pass game. This is also, and actually for me, it's even more so about the run game. Because you watch him against Michigan's edge players last week. Tobias Raymond was very good in the run game, in my opinion, last week. Just really being physical at the point of attack, washing down backside cuts, being stout at the on down blocks when they're trying to run their gap scheme stuff. Obviously, Lincoln Riley's an air raid guy, so a lot of their run game is they'll run some zone, but there's a lot of gap, a lot of traps, a lot of wraps, a lot of double pulls. It's a lot of gap scheme, and that concerns me a little bit against Notre Dame's undersized defensive line. And early in last year's game, USC was hit a couple gas runs against Notre Dame before Woody Marks got hurt. And I think USC is going to come out of this game and really try to run the ball at Notre Dame. And if you can be stout on the edge and really close down, just like we saw, upon further review, I would encourage you, if you're a board member, to check it out. We put all of our upon further reviews, all of our film breakdowns up at the top in the IB film breakdown tab. But if you look at the one we did where we broke down the Notre Dame defense, we showed examples of where NC State's trying to run counter. Jordan Patel squeezes down on and drills the guard and just clogs up the run lane. That's huge in this game. And so some of that will be going against Tobias Raymond. Some of that will be, squeezing down on him and taking on pullers. But these guys are going to have to be very good. These left ends be the right ends on the defense. It's the left end, attacking the left tackle on the offense. They're going to have to play well. Josh Burnham's been a dude the last 2 weeks when given the opportunity. I'd like to see more of him, especially if USC's having success running the ball. And then when they do throw the football, you're going to need to have a little bit of success. Rushing the quarterback is going to be important. I still think the best way to attack the quarterback rushing the pass rush against USC is more up the middle because how quickly the ball gets out. But there will be moments, especially against play action and some drops, if you're able to be aggressive with your coverage structure, there will be some win opportunities on the backside. So it is a dual threat thing, but it's run game first for me, and then getting after the quarterback. But I think this matchup is going to be very good because if Boubacar's dominating his side and they're just like, fine, we're just going to run to the left all game, and these guys don't step up and do their job, then it gets a little bit tougher for Notre Dame. But if Boubacar's doing his thing, and then Patelho and Burnham and Bryce Young are doing their thing, it's going to get real tough for USC to be able to run the football. And now all of a sudden, protecting the quarterback gets a little bit tougher as well.
It goes back to what we talked about last week. If, at some point, somebody alongside Boubacar Traore is going to have to step up, or else he's going to start to succumb to what happened to Isaiah Foskey in 2022. And teams can start to scheme around taking out just a singular defensive end. So one of those guys that you mentioned are going to have to step up. That is going to be imperative. Last guy that we're
I know a guy that's been making a lot of plays at that position. Josh Burnham. I mean, I've said it before, and people probably sick of me saying this. His big play, impact play to snaps ratio is insane right now.
Yeah.
They're just not playing him much. Man made 3 really impressive plays last week, only played 11 snaps. You know, he was a heck of a player for you last year. I get he was banged up, but he's healthy now. Play him. Play him. And now him and Patelho now going back and forth. Patelho's been playing like his hair's on fire the last few weeks. Like, love how he's playing. And you get those 2 guys to start playing a lot more with Bryce Young and, playing on both sides. He could play both sides. That's how you get it going. But, yeah, play number 40 more. That'd be a great idea. Let him go make some plays.
Agreed.
Just a thought.
Agreed. He's been extremely effective to your point when he's been in. I agree wholeheartedly, especially after when you go and watch upon further reviews and honestly just watching the game. Number 40 is impactful when he's in there. Another player that's going to have to be impactful, it's the last matchup that we're talking about, is number 14, the true freshman, Dallas Golden at nickel. And this is going to be a matchup this is the one that I am anxious to watch. I don't want to say nervous because I have a lot of faith in Dallas Golden, but big picture, when you talk Mekhi Lemon versus true freshman, that's one that draws a lot of attention. Dallas Golden is going to have to play well this game. And it is worth mentioning, if Devontae Smith is good to go, he is also going to have to perform well. Really, this is about the nickel or slot corner versus Mekhi Lemon. As of right now, I'm saying Dallas Golden because Devontae Smith is still questionable. But whoever steps in at nickel, Brian, is going to have to play well so we don't have a repeat of a Malachi Toney or a Mario Craver.
Right. And, I mean, this is a tough matchup for the nickels, especially, for Dallas Golden. And you're going to have to be on top of your game. It requires discipline. You've got to be physical, and you've got to be patient, and you've got to have a very short memory. Because the reality is, I was talking to Sean Davis last night and on the drive, and he's like, look, he's going to get his, and that's fine. What Notre Dame needs to do is, and I was actually going to have this as a key to victory, but I decided to just talk about it here and then go with a different key to victory. But and you got to have a Malachi Lemon plan or Mekhi Lemon plan. And what I mean by that is the way that you defend him, and part of that is Dallas or Devontae playing great. But you've got to have a plan to where, fine, if he gets 6 or 7 catches for 100 and 105 yards, fine. But don't let it be on 9 attempts. Make it be on 13, 14, 15 attempts. Really mix up. Make USC have to work hard to get him the football. Because if they can work hard to get him the football, if Notre Dame can kind of say, hey, look, you're going to have to do a lot to get him the ball. And then not let themselves get exposed in other areas. But like in this, we like some of those matchups. But if they're able to kind of say, hey, look, you're gonna get him the ball. He's gonna catch some screens, some quick games, some play actions. He's gonna kind of do his thing. It is what it is. That's fine. But last year, Mekhi Lemon had 9 catches for 133 yards on 10 targets. They threw him the ball 10 times. And like, no, that you can't have that. Like, if you're going to get him, if you're going to throw him off, you need to do that with, give up 9 catches for 130 yards. Fine. Make that be on 17 targets. And you want to know how that works? Just watch what NC State did with Malachi Fields last week. They just kind of bracketed him the whole game and got up in his face and didn't let him get clean releases. And it was a lot of tight windows that he was thrown into. Now, Malachi's a much different player than Mekhi Lemon, plays the boundary compared to the slot. But the point is, don't just line up there every snap and say, okay, this is what we're doing. Hopefully we can have some success with it. Hope it really works out really well. Make them work for it. That's going to be the big key. Make them work for it. And if they can make them work for it, then Notre Dame's got a shot to have some success in this game. But you don't want to be in a situation, Trev, where he's just ripping you up and it's efficient and it's explosive and there's just not a lot you can do. You need to make him work for it. If you can make him work for it, then you've got a shot to create enough incompletions and negatives to where you're still getting off the field. Yeah, he got his yards, but it was some hollow yards and he didn't really impact the game the way that he did last year. Like you look at last year and you look at the Louisville game, Ja'Cory Brooks caught 5 passes for 71 yards. Colin Lacey caught 5 passes for 71 yards. Chris Bell caught 3 passes for 21 yards. I mean, their 3 stud receivers had 163 yards receiving on 13 catches. But they had to target Ja'Cory Brooks 9 times, had to target Colin Lacey 9 times. They targeted Chris Bell 6 times. So you're barely completing over 50% of your throws in your targets to those guys. Well, if that's where Notre Dame is, then they're going to be in a good place. And, a lot of 2nd and 9s, a lot of 3rd and 8s. Those are the places you're going to be. So he's going to get his. You got to make sure they don't go for long touchdowns. You've got to make sure that you don't let them rip you up on 3rd down. And you have to have a plan. And Trevor, this is something you said to me when we were talking, is you have to have a plan that if your nickels are struggling, what's your plan? They didn't have one when they played Mario Craver. They didn't have one against Malachi Toney. You've got to have this is what we're going to go with. But if Dallas or Devontae are struggling with Mekhi Lemon, here's what we're going to go to try to slow them down.
There has to be some sort of contingency plan. They went to having Leonard Moore shadow Mario Craver way too late into the game. Way too late. Look, in matchups like this, it's not a secret what either – and USC's defense is having the same conversation in their defensive meeting rooms too. If USC loses this game because – Will Pauling goes for 130 yards in the air, but they don't let Fields beat you. They contain Raritan. They don't let Notre Dame's run game go crazy. Then sometimes you just tip your cap because it's a talented football team. I was watching the Monday night game, Bills and Falcons, and the Falcons only had 2 really good offensive players available, Drake London and Bijan Robinson. And me and a buddy were talking. It's like, look, if you're the Bills defense, there's essentially 2 guys that you can't let beat you. And what happened? Bijan Robinson had 240 total yards of offense, and Drake London had 10 catches for $150 and a touchdown. I look at this matchup the same. If this is a matchup where Tanuk Hines, a true freshman, goes for $110 and is an efficient receiver, sometimes you just tip your cap to a really talented football player. But if it's like last year where, you line up, you watched it happen to you last year, you watched Mekhi Lemon tear you up, and if you make that same mistake again this year, that's a lapse in preparation. So there has to be levels to different plans that you have with Dallas Golden. While he's on the field, and if he's doing a good job, give him safety help. Don't leave him out. Don't leave a true freshman out on an island and ask him to guard USC's best receiver for 60 minutes. And like we talked about, if it's not working out, you have to have some level of a contingency plan. And when it's, in the 4th quarter, 3 minutes left in a tie ball game, that can't be when you make the switch. Be like, hey, 15, how about you go shadow 6 for the rest of the game? It's like, for the next 95 seconds. Cool. Sounds good. So there has to be some level of a contingency plan. That's going to be huge in this one. Absolutely. That's the 3rd matchup. It's going to be a big one, Brian. Definitely going to be a big one.
These are all areas where USC has got the matchups we went with are all areas where these are not, hey, this bum that USC has, go rip them up. These are matchups where these are good football players. And you're going to have to be on top of your game, and to me, that's ultimately what wins games like this. Not that, hey, we went out and tore up this kid who's not good. Yeah, you have to do that. That's a given. When you have matchup advantages, it's a given you take advantage of those. That's what any good coach is going to do. But to win games like this, to beat the best teams on your schedule, there's a lot more to it, Trev. And part of that is, hey, where are they good? And where are you also good? Or, and your guys got to win those matchups. Where are they good? And maybe you're not as good. You have to have a plan to be able to thrive in those situations. And so that's why I look at Trev and say, that's what I think that's what our focus were. Not, I know that's what our focus was on a lot of these keys to victory was, where are they good? And where are you good? And the importance of you winning those matchups. But then also, where do they have some matchup advantages? Joe Otting versus, in his first start against their D tackles. You look at Dallas Golden and Devontae Smith against Mekhi Lemon. Those are areas where you say, I don't know that Notre Dame has the advantage there, which means you really have to play well in those situations, because if they can't dominate those matchups, then you've got a much better shot at winning.
Folks, that's going to do it for part 1 of today's show, but don't go anywhere. We're getting ready to dive into keys to victory. But before we get there, you know what to do. Make sure you hit that like button. You're subscribed to this channel. Also, make sure you're subscribed to the CFB Nation channel. Vince and I are going live tomorrow night on the CFB Nation channel for this week's edition of the Spread Option. We're going live at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So make sure that you guys are subscribed to that channel as well. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com.